Hey team, this week on Exercise of the Week, we have an early stance, wide stance, good morning, staggered stance. So lots going on here. Let's break it down. So I have used a kneeling back leg to fix it. So it's much harder to change the angle of this back leg, and I'm not able to put too much weight through it as compared to if I was putting my foot on the floor, where it's a lot easier to shift around and take the stimulus away from the front leg, which is what we are focusing on. I've gone wide stance to tweak out the lateral hip. So whenever we're hinging, we are using a combination of hip flexion, hip adduction, and hip internal rotation to load primarily the glute max and the posterior chain. So by going wide stance, we shorten the glute med, which means that lateral hip can't take over, which is a common compensation pattern for a lot of people, which blocks a good hinge. So we're working predominantly on hip flexion and hip internal rotation. I'm going to show you 3 setups for different tweaks to adjust the stimulus. So the first one is just the regular 2-handed hinge. So you can see I'm shifting over onto this front leg. So most of my weight is going through here. I'm pretty heel heavy, focusing on getting the anterior medial, the front inside edge of the heel bone, pressing into that midfoot area to then come up. It's hard to see from this angle, but I am really focusing on trying to keep that back, the hip back and up, to ensure I'm hinging. I'm not shifting forwards and my shin angle is negative, so my knee is behind my heel. This mimics the early stance of gait, which is where we get a lot of our benefit from a good hinge mechanic. I'm also driving my foot into the floor to stand up rather than just doing a back extension. So this is variation 2, where we're doing same side, it's laterally loaded, and this is good for somebody who is really struggling to get into this hip. So we're actually biasing a little bit more external rotation, so we get more of a flexion stimulus, just straight back, pure hinging. And because we're not lengthening in internal rotation at the same time, we're now giving a very strong sagittal stimulus. Like the only thing that can really help with this is kind of proximal hamstring and glute in the sagittal plane. So this is a nice one for somebody who's really tight and struggles with internal rotation. We can actually get some good reps here and then maybe go back to the double hand one before going into variation 3, which is the most demanding. So same applies. This is trickier because there's less muscles or less musculature helping out, but still try to focus on driving through the foot to stand up rather than standing up with your trunk, core and or back, which I am doing a little bit here as I look at it now. But you should feel a nice big stretch in the posterior hip, even into the pelvic floor because of the wide stance as well. Then variation 3, we're going contralaterally loaded, and this is going to give you the most internal rotation. It's going to demand the most internal rotation from this hip. Same goes drive out the floor. So this might be a big stretch in that posterior hip, even into the capsule. And if somebody hasn't been here before, they will feel like their arse is literally ripping open. So go easy on the loading. You can even do this without weight to start with, just to try and get that stretch into that position. And yeah, give it a go, see how it feels. But if you haven't done anything like this before, you might be surprised at how strong the stimulus can be. And it's a great movement prep for any hinge-based movements, but you can load it up and go heavy with this as well as an excellent accessory exercise. But yeah, give it a go. Let me know how you get on.